Okay, in this video we're going to be looking at the relationship between aggregate supply and an efficient allocation of resources. You need to be able to explain how they interlink and how we can achieve both of them. So you need to be able to explain how an increase in efficiency helps to boost aggregate supply, and as well policies that how an increase in aggregate supply can help to boost efficiency with relation to various policies. So just be mindful that increasing our productive capacity comes about by increasing either the quantity or quality of a nation's productive resources. So quantity means the amount of capital in the economy. We could include increasing the amount of capital, so by finding new productive land, increasing as well as increasing incentives for mineral exploration. It could include increasing the size of the labour force via childcare subsidies and things like that. This allows for greater production without inflationary pressures because we've got more supply. In the long term, aggregate supply is generally boosted by increasing the quality of our resources. That's what's going to increase productivity in the long term. So just in relation to productivity versus efficiency, productivity is a measure of volume of output in goods and services that is produced from a given number of inputs. So how much output we're generating from our land, labour and capital resources. We've got multi-factor productivity, which is output as a measure of using both capital and labour inputs. So labour productivity is labour output per unit of input, so labour output per hour measured in GDP per unit of input. Capital productivity is output per machine hour. Multi-factor productivity is our total output with use of both capital and labour resources. Efficiency is about using our resources in a way to maximise the net benefits for Australians. So are we achieving an efficient allocation of resources means that we're maximising the benefits for Australians and maximising our total living standards. And increasing productivity will allow us to produce more goods and services so that we can meet more of consumers' wants and needs, which should help to achieve a more efficient allocation of resources. Okay, it's important that you can define each of the different types of efficiency. So allocative efficiency is about achieving the most efficient allocation of resources so that our land, labour and capital are allocated in the way that's going to maximise the benefits for society. Technical efficiency is about producing at the lowest possible cost. And it's about increasing our product. When we're maximising our output per unit of input. It also includes lowest average cost, which is really important. We'll talk about that a little bit later in terms of how policy might be able to boost. Why aggregate supply policies boost technical efficiency because they help to lower prices. Intertemporal efficiency, achieving a balance between using our resources for current as opposed to future consumption. And dynamic efficiency is about the ability of a nation or industry to respond to changing market conditions. So how quickly they can respond to changes in tastes and preferences. So aggregate supply policies boost efficiency because of the following reasons. They help to increase competition. So aggregate supply policies can boost efficiency because there's more competition, so there's more incentive for businesses to work hard and consumers and producers to work hard. They provide financial incentives for motivation, so that might include labour market reforms where people get paid more when they're more productive. And they also allow us to upgrade our skills and the quality of our productive resources, which then allows for a more efficient allocation of resources as well. This is your critical table. I'm not going to list everything, but what you need to be able to do is provide examples of supply-side policies that boost efficiency. So what policies are most relevant to each of the different types of efficiency? When you're talking about allocative efficiency, you're talking about policies that are going to allow us to allocate our resources in a manner which best suits society or best maximises society's living standards. The best ones to talk about, in my opinion, is trade liberalisation. Trade liberalisation encourages firms to specialise in areas of comparative advantage. So by exposing us to greater foreign trade, by removing tariffs and other barriers to trade, it encourages specialisation in areas of comparative advantage, which then allows us to increase our output per unit of input. It allows for lower prices, and it allows for increased access to goods and services, which all helps to boost allocative efficiency. Immigration, you could talk about potentially. Labour market reforms would be another one. That encourages people to work more productively, which then helps to lower prices and gives people access to more goods and services as well. So that would be another good policy for allocative efficiency. Another good one for allocative efficiency would be infrastructure spending. Infrastructure spending helps to reduce bottlenecks in the economy, which allows for increased productivity because we can distribute goods faster at cheaper prices, which then allows people to get access to cheaper goods and services and maximises their material living standards. Technical efficiency, I'd be talking, the best one would be to use research and development grants So by giving research and development grants, it helps firms to invest in better technology or better capital, which will then allow them to lower their prices, and also allows them to increase their level of output per unit of input, which is that's what technical efficiency is about. It's about maximizing productivity and doing things at the lowest cost. So research and development will allow firms to get access to best practice around the world, access to better technology, and therefore allow them to reduce their prices. Education and training is another one you can use, because that's going to make firms more multi-skilled, more productive. And then rail projects, infrastructure projects would be another example you could use with the technical efficiency. Dynamic efficiency is all about encouraging market flexibility, so encouraging a culture of innovation. Ways we can become more dynamic efficiency: removing unfair dismissal laws. That allows firms to quickly shift resources to areas that are in high demand when there is when people's preferences and tastes change, so they don't have to hold on to employees for too long. Creating a more adaptive workforce, multi-skilling employees, so providing subsidies or concessions for firms to train employees in a range of different reasons would be another one. Further tariff reductions, that allows for firms to be exposed to greater competition, so they have to quickly change and be adaptive to people's preferences and tastes, otherwise they'll be taken out by the lower import prices. So tariff reductions, removing unfair dismissal laws are good examples for dynamic efficiency. Intertemporal efficiency, you could talk about the carbon tax, because that's an example of something that's going to improve our environment in the long term. So it's about maximising the efficiency in the long term by putting a tax on consumers. And then other things could involve tax concessions for savings or superannuation, which will give people the incentive to save to boost our productive capacity in the long term, because we'll have more funds available and more money in the economy. You need to be able to articulate how boosting aggregate supply can increase efficiency. So boosting our productive capacity by boosting the size of the labour force helps to reduce average costs of production for firms. That would be an example of an aggregate supply policy, which will then boost technical efficiency, because we've boosted our aggregate supply by increasing the size of our labour force. That's allowed us to lower our average cost of production because wages go down, and that helps to boost technical efficiency because it allows for greater output at a lower cost. Research and development into new technology would be a supply-side policy that will allow for increased technical efficiency. Infrastructure spending is another example that we can use to try and boost efficiency. Examples of how increasing efficiency boost aggregate supply. So what you're talking about there is, what are some policies that boost efficiency, and then what's the flow-on effect to aggregate supply? So the idea is that, for example, investment in research and development allows us to increase our productivity, which then lowers production costs and therefore boosts aggregate supply because firms are more willing to supply. Infrastructure spending will boost efficiency because there'll be less technical efficiency, there's less traffic jams, less congestion, and that again will make firms more willing to supply because of lower costs of production. Labour market reforms encouraging productivity, which again has the same impact. Training and education, again boosting productivity, which flows on to lower production costs and an increased willingness to supply. The last thing you need to be aware of is a couple of conflicts between the goals, different types of efficiency. So the best ones to use are policies that help to increase technical efficiency. New innovations, new technology can hurt intertemporal efficiency because they can hurt the environment. Trade liberalisation could hurt the environment because there's more transportation, there's also more production in areas where we have comparative advantage like mining, which can hurt our resources as well. So you need to be aware of some trade-offs as well.